Hi students, hope everyone is fine and safe. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all to my new video, and today's video is about another interesting topic in the subject microprocessor, microcontroller and interfacing techniques. We're going to see the operating modes and control word configuration of programmable peripheral interface 8255. In previous video, we have just saw about the functional block diagram and pin diagram of 8255, and today we are going to see about the different operation modes of 8255 and how we can configure those operation modes based upon the control word configuration, right? And before starting this video, I would recommend you people to go and watch the previous video of 8255 so that you can understand the basic of 8255, what is the need of 8255, why is that we go for 8255, and what are the different ports in 8255, all those things, right? So that you can easily understand the operation modes of 8255 in this particular video, right? To start with, we have already said this 8255 is specifically designed to increase the interface handling capacity of different microprocessor, right? And we are going to see the operation modes of 8255. In previous video, I have clearly explained 8255 have two different modes of operation. What are the two different modes? One is BSR mode. Another one is IO mode, input output mode, right? And BSR mode is nothing but bit set reset mode, and this IO mode is nothing but input output mode, right? This IO mode is split into two, classified into three, which is mode 0, mode 1 and mode 2. You have to very clearly understand how these modes are getting selected, how different ports are getting selected. We know that in 8255 we have three different ports, which is port A, port B and the port C, right? And these ports will be selected based upon A0 and A1, right? And these modes will be selected based upon the control word register configuration, right? And coming to this mode, now I have explained what is bit set reset mode in previous video. Bit set reset mode is nothing but this is just to enable and disable, that is to set and reset a particular individual bit, right, of port C, This mode is supported only by port C. Port A and port B will not support BSR mode, right? What is BSR mode? BSR mode is bit set reset mode to set and reset the individual bit of the port C, right? And IO mode, all the ports will support IO mode, but in IO mode we have three different modes, which is mode 0, mode 1 and mode 2, right? We will go to different ports, which mode supports which ports, right? We will see that little later, but before that you got to understand what is mode 0, what is mode 1 and what is mode 2, right? Mode 0, sir, mode 0 is called as simple IO mode, right? There is no data transfer, there is no interfacing capability in mode 0. What it will do is it will just make that port, whether it act as an input port or output port, right? That is called a simple IO mode, right? In this mode, it will just work as a input mode or a output mode. There is no data transfer here and there is no interface handling capability, right? So this mode, right, all the three ports, port A, you can see port A, port B, port C, all three will support this particular mode, mode 0, right, where there is no data transfer, right? And you can see mode 1, right? Mode 1, it will be supported, it is called as handshake mode, right? Here it supports interface handling capability, right? Whereas in simple IO mode there is no interface handling capability. Handshake mode we have interface handling capability, right? What is interface handling capability? That is, we can able to do a data transfer. Right? And data transfer between 8255 and the microprocessor, right? and this is called as handshake mode, right? Why it is called as handshake mode, right? Because in 8255 there is no internal clock. There is no internal clock. So before data transfer, we need to do a initialization, right? That will be done through this handshake mode. That is be done through a control signal, through the control signal, right? So before data transfer, a control signal has to be sent between two different uh, 8255 and as well as the microprocessor, right? Two devices, right? And then after initialization, data transfer will take place, right? That initialization is done by this handshake mode, right? And what is the other mode? Mode 2. Mode 2 is called as bidirectional mode. Bidirectional mode, it is also supports the interfacing capability, but here it will be done in bidirectional, right? Same time, bidirectional, but this is not bidirectional. Mode 1 is not bidirectional. Clear? Right? And even here, there will be a handshake because there will be data transfer, that is interfacing handling capability. And when it comes to mode 1, you can see mode 1, it is supported by port A and as well as port B, but port C will not support, right? And similarly mode 2 will be supported only by port A. It will not be supported by port B and port C, right? And all this are IO mode, input output mode, and this is BSR mode. BSR mode, it is supported only by port C. It is only supported by port C. You have to be very clear with this particular split up so that you can very clearly understand how the modes are selected, how the ports are configured, right? So BSR mode is supported only by port C, right? So that is why I said in BSR mode, it is bit set reset mode. It will set and reset any particular bit of port C because only port C supports this BSR mode. And apart from that, port C is the one which helps for handshaking process, right? It is the one which is establish the connection, the control signal for data transfer. You can see here port C, it supports handshaking in mode 1 and as well as in mode 2, right? In mode 1, it supports both port A and port B. Say for example, right, if port A and as well as port B of the device both are involved in data transfer, then port C will support the handshaking process for port A and as well as handshaking process of port B, right? That is, the 4 bits will support port A and 4 bit of port C will support port B for handshaking process, right? Whereas in mode 2 only port A supports mode 2, right? So here the complete 6 bits, that is 5 bits, 3 bits for output and 2 bits for input, right? The complete 5 bits, 5 lines will support the handshaking process for mode 2 in port A. Clear? Right? So this is the different modes of operation of 8255. I have said what is bit set reset mode and what is IO mode, right? So you have two different modes. This IO modes is separated into 3: mode 0, mode 1 and mode 2, where it is called a simple IO mode, handshake mode and bidirectional mode, right? And this mode 0, mode 1, mode 2, mode 0 is supported by port A, port B, port C, whereas mode 1 is supported by port A and port B, whereas mode 2 is supported by only by port A, right? And BSR mode is supported only by port C, and it also supports the handshaking process, right? Now you understand different modes of 8255. Now we will see how these modes can be configured, right? I have already said A0 and A1 is the one which selects the different ports, and if it is 1-1, it selects the control word, right? What is control word? The control word is the one which tells you how to configure different modes, which port works in different modes, right? Which mode, that will be set by the control word. How port A works, whether it works in mode 0, mode 1 or mode 2, it will be configured using the control word register, right? So you know that a control word register, it is an 8-bit, that is the data bus buffer. Like we will load the control register in that data bus buffer D0 to D7, right? Now you can clearly understand how different modes can be configured here. You can see here from D0 to D7, right? So this D7 bit, the D7 bit is the one which tells you whether it supports the IO mode or BSR mode, right? So how this is configured, whether it is going to work in input output mode or BSR mode, that is determined by the D7 bit. If it is 1, this bit is 1, then it supports the IO mode. If it is 0, it supports BSR mode, right? And you already know that this BSR mode is supported only by port C. It will be only supported by port C, right? And now you can see here D5 and D6. These two bits tells you about port A. About port A. It will tell you in which mode the port A is going to work. We know that we have three modes in IO modes. Mode 0, mode 1, mode 2. Which mode the mode A is going to work? That is determined by these two pins, D5 and D6. You can see here, if it is 0, 0, then port A will work in mode 0. If it is 0, 1, it will work in mode 1. If it is 1 and don't care, right? It is supported by mode 2, that it works in the mode 2, right? And now what is D4 bit? You have to be very clear with this. It tells you about port A, whether it is going to work as an input port or output port, right? You have to be understand very clearly. These two defines the modes of operation of port A, right? In mode 0 it going to work, or in mode 1, whether it is going to work in IO mode 0, mode 1 or mode 2, right? That will be set by this two pins, but this pin will tell you whether that port is going to work as an input port or the output port, right? You can see here, if it is 1, it will act as an input port, and if it is 0, it will act as an output port, right? Similarly, D3, we know that port C is being split into upper nibble and lower nibble, right? Upper nibble, the upper 4 bits, and lower nibble, lower 4 bits. So D3 tells you, right, whether the upper nibble, the upper port C, that is going to work either in input port or output port, right? You can see if it is 1, it is input port, and if it is 0, it will act as an output port, right? And similarly, D2, you can see D2. This D2, it is going to tell you the port B, how port B is going to work, in which mode the port B has to be worked, right? If whether it is going to support mode 0 or mode 1. We already know that port A will support all three modes. Port B will support only mode 0 and mode 1. Port C will support only BSR mode, right? So this pin will tell you the mode of operation of port B, right? So if it is 0, if it is mode 0, and if it is 1, it is mode 1. Similarly, this port B, whether it is going to work as an input port or output port, this tells you only the modes of operation, but this bit tells you whether it is going to work as an input port or the output port, right? So you can see here, so this is port B. If it is 1, it will act as an input port, and if it is 0, it will act as an output port, right? And the last bit, you can see D0, right? This will tell you the lower nibble, that is port C lower nibble, whether it is going to work in input port or output port. You can see here 1 is equal to 1. If it is 1, it is input port, and if it is 0, it is output port, right? And you don't want to worry about, you can see here we have mode of A to define and mode of B to be defined, right? But we don't have mode to any bits to defines the port C, because port C works in the BSR mode. That will be determined by this particular bit, right? If this is 0, then it will be BSR mode, right? Then port C alone, it will be supported. Clear? Right? This is the control word register. This is how you can able to configure the IO modes. The IO modes. Say for example, if this is 1, it will work in IO mode, and all these pins, by using all these pins, we can able to determine which IO mode is going to work. Mode 0, mode 1 or mode 2. Which port is going to work. All that can be configured using this particular control word. Similarly, we can able to determine for BSR mode, right? For BSR mode, what will happen? This bit, right? This bit has to be 0, right? So you can see how to configure the control word for BSR. you can see here if this pin is 1, it will be IO mode, and if it is 0, it is BSR mode. Now consider this is for BSR mode configuration. If it is BSR mode configuration, then this pin will be 0. This pin will be 0, and you don't want to worry about these 3 bits. Why? These 3 bits tells you the modes of operation of port A. So you don't want to worry about this, because in BSR mode only port C is supported. So this is don't care here, right? And in BSR mode you have to understand here, we know that port C is the only port which supports BSR mode, and port C is 8-bit from 0 to 7, correct? 0 to 7, right? So it is 8-bit. Now you see this D1, D2, D3, right? So we know that there is 8 different bits or 8 different terminals, right? So which bit in port C is selected? Either 0 is selected, 1 is selected, 2 is selected. Which bit is selected? That will be determined by these 3 pins, D1, D2 and D3, right? How it is selected, you can see here. If it is 0, 0, 0, then bit 0 is selected of port C, right? Port C 0 bit is selected, and if it is 0, 0, 1, then bit 1, right? That is port C, bit 1 is selected, and if it is 0, 1, 1, then 3rd bit, and if it is 1, 0, 0, 4th bit, and if it is 1, 0, 1, it is 5th bit, and if it is 1, 1, 0, it is 6th bit, and if it is 1, 1, 1, it is 7th bit. I repeat this again, only port C supports the BSR mode, right? In that port C we have 7 bits, right? We know BSR mode is nothing but bit set reset mode. It will set or reset any particular bit, right? So we ought to understand which bit is selected, right, in this 8 bits, right? So that will be determined by this particular 3 pins. The status of these 3 pins, 0, 0, 0 selects PC0, like that. This values determines which bit, right? And as I said, we know now if this is selected, the bit 0 is selected, right? If this value is 0, 0, 0, then bit 0 is selected in port C. Similarly, if this is the condition 0, 1, 1, then 3rd bit, right, that is selected. That is the 4th bit is selected, PC3, right? But we got to know what is the value of this bit, whether it is 0 or 1. I know that this bit is selected, but I have to know what is the value of that. It is 0 or 1, whether it is set or reset, because BSR is nothing but it tells you whether it is set or reset, right? Bit set reset mode, right? So that will be understood, that will be done by this particular bit, right? So if it is 1, it is the selected bit is set. If it is 0, the selected bit is 0. That is reset, right? So which bit in port C, which bit is selected by these 3 pins, right? Either 0, 1, 2, 3 or up to 7. Which bit, that will be determined by these 3 pins, and that bit either it is 0 or 1, that will be determined by this particular bit. Clear? This is the control board configuration for BSR mode, right? And I have already explained what is mode 0, mode 1 and mode 2. That is given as theory here, right? So mode 0, it is simple input output mode where it will act as just as a input output port, that's all. There is no interrupt handling capability, right? And mode 1, we can call it as handshake IO mode, where we will do a data transfer. Interfacing is done here. And as I said here, we don't have internal clock. So what we will do is we will have control signals to do a handshaking process. That is why it is called a handshake mode. A very good example is, you know that the printer will be connected to the processor, to the computer CPU, right? But CPU works very fast, but the printer, it will work little slower when compared to the CPU, right? So there should be a speed synchronization between the CPU and the printer. So in that case, we need a handshaking process. So that can be done using mode 1. And after the handshaking process, we can do a data transfer. Similarly, mode 2, as I said, it is a bidirectional one, right? And even here in bidirectional data, this mode 2 is selected only by port A. Port A only supports the mode 2, right? And Here also port C will support for handshaking process. All the 5 pins will be used for handshaking process in mode 2, whereas in mode 1, right? In mode 1, 4 bits will be supporting for handshaking process of port A, and 4 bits will be used for handshaking process of port B, right? Even here, the port C is used for handshaking process, right? This is the operation modes of 8255. Coming to the advantages, 8255, as I said, the predominant working of 8255 is to interface with, to increase the interfacing capability of 8085 and 8086 microprocessor, right? So it is very versatile, right? We have varieties of modes and we have three different ports. It can be configured for input and output, right? And it supports multiple modes of operation as well, and very easy to use. It is easy to use. You can see, you can easy to relatively easy to program as well, right? The control register or PPI can be configured using simple commands, and similarly it is very compatible, right? It is most predominantly used interfacing IC, and it is very compatible with basic processors, right? And it is of low cost, right? The cost is very low when compared, and it is used in many applications. When it comes to disadvantages, the limited functionality because of 8-bit ports, right? And it is versatile, but the functionality is little bit limited. That is, it is 8-bit, so high speed data transfer is not possible. Similarly, the number of ports, right? It has only 3 ports and it is of 8 bits, so it is limited, and the resolution is also limited here, and it is an absolute technology. Even though it supports with, even now we are using 8255, but it is an absolute technology where the latest technology, new advanced interface components have evolved right now, right? So this is about 8255 operation modes. Today what we have seen is, we have seen the operation modes, how to configure the different operation modes of 8255, how the control word register is configured, what is BSR mode, what is input output mode. All this we have seen in this video. I believe this video will be very useful for you. Thank you, my dear students.
Thank you students. Thank you for watching. கண்டிப்பாக இந்த வீடியோ உங்களுக்கு எல்லாருக்கும் ரொம்ப யூஸ்ஃபுல்லாக இருக்கும் நம்புகிறேன். Subscribe Passionate Professor and keep learning. Thank you very much.